Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank you for taking some time here on your Wednesday afternoon to joining us on our best practices for 2022 for all MSPs. My name's Christian Johns. I'm the community manager here with TimeZest. I have a panel here set to discuss, just some challenges that all MSPs are facing coming out of the pandemic. Kicking off in 2020, certainly persisting through 2021 and 2022. Quickly, just want to do a quick intro on who we have with us. As I stated a few moments ago, my name is Christian Johns. I'm the community manager here with TimeZest, been on board with the TimeZest team and our scheduling automation and workflow automation solution since early 2021. On the call, we have Johanna Stroba, our Director of Customer Success.
Hi. Yep. For me, I've been with TimeZest now pushing 2 years. So I handle all the customer success. If you are a current customer, you've probably spoken to me before. And so I handle any setup questions or onboarding or training needs that you may have. We have Victoria.
Hi, I'm Victoria. I'm with Ergos Technology. I'm the live desk manager. Been here since 2012.
Wow, absolutely. So we, selected Victoria to join us. Ergos is a great partner of TimeZest. In working with Victoria, we typically reach out to her to try to get on a pulse of how things are going out in the field, with regards to some of the challenges that our partners face. We're delighted to have her join us here today. So, let's tackle the 80-pound girl in the room. Everybody's up against this, in my day-to-day, whether I'm out, in the channel, at an event, doing webinars, here remotely. Regardless the size and scope of the MSP, no matter where they're at within their, MSP journey, whether they're an upstart or a, 2-decade, matured seasoned MSP, everybody's facing challenges with, the labor pool or the Great Resignation, aka the Great Reshuffling, the Great Attrition, or the Big Quit. And all indicators, are showing us that it's still going strong as we turn the corner into 2022, unfortunately, and certainly not specific or, just even within our space, within the MSP channel, these labor woes are going on across the board, for most organizations. Quick rehash, 48 million people quit their job in 2021. Out of the gate here in 2022. We've seen, that substantial resignations continue in terms of the Great Reshuffle and people resigning and or quitting their jobs. In February, that increased as well. So for early 2022 and the labor statistics we're seeing out of the gate here, as we exited Q1 and head into Q2, is that the Great Reshuffling will continue to increase in 2022 to the tune of 51 million plus reshufflings. What does that lead to? What does that mean to you, for your MSP practice? Margin compression is always a reality for all MSPs. Certainly something, from an efficiency standpoint that is always top of mind, for all MSPs. That has certainly been exasperated here with, the market dynamics that we faced here in 2021 and 2022. As your labor costs go sideways, go upside down, certainly that's going to cut into and eat into your margin. And profitability pressure due to the compression in the workforce is likely the biggest hurdle that you and your help desk and most MSPs will face here in 2022. And that, just was always the case to a certain extent. MSPs must work fast and maximize efficiency, and every efficiency counts. And we'd like to think, most importantly, being efficient at scheduling will certainly cut into what you might potentially face with these market dynamics in 2022. So I always ask in my webinars, does scheduling meetings waste time in your day? It's a little bit of a loaded question. I've been in the MSP channel myself for the better part of 12 years on the vendor side, selling solutions and software into MSPs. I always like to shine a light on that every process that I'm aware of or that I've been privy to within an MSP practice in the 12 years that I've been within the space has been reinvented or changed 3 or 4 times over. The one thing that's relatively constant amongst most MSPs is how they schedule. You know, when I entered this space in 2010, the vast majority, you know, of you and your peer group were scheduling, you know, critical client appointments to deliver support, you know, by way of the help desk projects, you know, and a whole host of standard MSP appointment types. It's all phone call based, email based, exchanging voicemails. You know, it's relatively the one process on a help desk that's remained static throughout the course and arc of my career, you know, within the channel and within the MSP space. I want to kind of open it up and turn it over to Victoria. Victoria, if you can kind of, you know, share a little bit of what you've seen at Ergos, you know, specific to the Great Resignation and how that's potentially affected, you know, your margins per se, you know, by all means.
Yeah, so it's been weird past couple of years, right? And we have seen through the Great Resignation lost a lot of people who have been here for a long time. So it's more than just losing technical skill set. It's also the tribal knowledge that takes time to learn. And what was funny is a lot of times when we would do exit interviews, people would say, well, I stayed so long because of the people. I like the people I work with. Everyone went to this remote world where you weren't really having that interaction. It was just all work, 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 work. Some people work better that way, and some people need to see the people and have something outside of work in their workday, if that makes sense. So we were having a lot of people leave out the door. This was happening everywhere, so it was making hiring very competitive, very hard, and you could be losing someone that is maybe like a tier 2, tier 3, great skill set. They had that box checked, but they also had the tribal knowledge. They knew the clients, they knew the tool sets, how the company worked. And, you know, you were paying them one set salary. And now because of the competition and just there are so many other options out there, like, especially with the ability to work remote, you could work anywhere. It got harder, and you found that you were paying what you normally are used to pay a tier 2 for, you know, a starting tier 2, you were paying that salary instead to tier 1. So then you had to accommodate for training internally to help the technical skill set grow, and also wait on that tribal knowledge to grow, and in order for them to be effective. So you have to get smart about the ways that, well, we had to, about the ways we were doing things. And our live desk, our help desk is pretty big. So instead of just having this big pool, we started breaking up smaller groups and giving people a direct escalation point that they could work with. Because of the size, we were able to do that, but we still had those challenges because of the gap. And then that led to a higher cost, because you also want to retain your employees. And a lot of employers, you know, you got to make sure that you're reviewing that, taking care of your employees if you want to keep them on. So we took a break during COVID, and then we went back to it, got everyone caught up. Prices start to increase. You're making concessions for clients, because we had a lot of clients not doing so well during COVID. So we're like, you know what, we'll give you these concessions. Then we also started saying, everyone's working remote, then we're going to put agents on your home computers and support them, because that's what you're working from. That's a cost, right? Fast forward to this year, we kind of got to all employees and with our clients, like, we have to start normalizing things. And with that comes price increases. Those are always difficult conversations to have. Some people are in practice. I know our UK office does a review annually. Sometimes we're not so consistent with that, but we made efforts this year to kind of go through that and have the conversation with the clients. And most of them understood. They're like, well, we haven't had a price increase from you forever. So yeah. And we talk about, you know, because we made those concessions, changes, and kind of really focused on their support experience throughout this time, whatever we could do to make it easy for you, it was easy for us we didn't get much pushback with those price increases, but we had to streamline a lot. And that's where TimeZest came in for us, because I don't know if you noticed, but since all this happened, everyone went remote. Ergos, we weren't remote before, right? We had all of our offices, but now it's like everything is a meeting, because you're not close by with anyone. You can't walk by your coworker and talk about that thing you had to talk about, and everyone's busy. So everything's a meeting. And that same thing's happening with our clients. So we would try to call them on a support ticket. This was a problem before, but even worse during, you know, after the COVID. We would try to call them on a support ticket, can't, they're on a call, they're busy, unable to get back to us, or they're going from the office into back home, back and forth. So we started utilizing a TimeZest a lot in those scenarios because they already had their time scheduled out with meetings, and they were able to look at their calendar, find a time, schedule it for us. And then we started using it internally as well. Like if I want to do a one-on-one with someone,
Excellent.
I would send them my TimeZest to make it a little easier.
A little bit less of a consideration when you could just walk past cubes, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's dispersed for sure.
Yeah. So we had to use it a lot more externally and internally, and it's been fun. It's been fun and good.
Two things that, I want to follow up with there, just based on what you shared is, where did you find in those exit interviews, where the exodus was leading to? Did you mostly find that they were maybe leaving the MSP space, going into maybe mid-market or enterprise, tech, engineer or support roles, a little bit of both? What are you seeing in terms of that competitive landscape?
It was a little bit of both. And then we had a few that were complete career changes.
Oh, wow.
Like it came to a realization, we're like, you know what, this was cool, but I'm going to be a police officer, or I'm going to do this. But in some cases I was pretty shocked because prior we weren't, like I said, remote. You would go into the office, brick and mortar buildings throughout our various locations, and then we went to remote, and people who were asking for remote a lot before Ergos made that change, they ended up taking positions for companies where they had to go into the office.
Interesting.
And a lot of those cases, it was moving off of an MSP Helpdesk, which we all know is a challenge and can drain you sometimes, and going into an internal IT support role. So.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. In my own personal network, so not specific to my affiliation and what I do day to day for TimeZest, but in my local community, I live about 45 minutes north of Midtown Manhattan. So I knew quite a few headhunters in the tech space. And a lot of them seem to have drilled into MSP burnout, and have kind of highlighted or marketing the positions in the mid-market and enterprise space on help desks, in an IT role, by really drilling into that. So, it's definitely challenging. From a retention standpoint, but when you have upmarket coming into the MSP space, everybody's got the same challenges. It's got to be brutal out there, to say the least. You drilled into knowledge transfer. Definitely, a huge component to scaling. Any MSP, any help desk. Having those processes in place to get the person in the seat and in the role quicker. For where you need them to be. Tell me how simple it is to kind of break down and roll out to your new team members from a training perspective, how Ergo schedules.
So we kind of, in these situations, you got to step back and like, how can we get better? Because we hired a lot of people through COVID. A lot of them we've never met in person, and we had to find out, okay, how are we going to train these new hires remotely and get them through everything. So we utilize a couple tools. We use Tracks and ConnectWise. If any of you are familiar with that, we created a track for new hire onboardings. And in the service tickets, we also included a workflow that would send them a TimeZest link to schedule the training.
Interesting.
Yeah, so we went that route, and it made things a little bit more streamlined and consistent. And then we started using a tool, Cloud Radio, where we're putting all of our, we document things in IT Glue. Documentation is key, but we needed like a centralized place that was easy for people. So we started using that. So we just started trying to squeeze what we could out of all of our tool sets in order to make it work, because it was touch and go there for a bit. And so what do I want to make on TimeZest and the MSP burnout? I had a couple of individuals where things completely changed for them, and they're stay-at-home dads now, or stay-at-home moms, or they have to do pickups. And a key thing was TimeZest. You could do the custom availability. You could also block out your ConnectWise calendar. And although, you got to kind of hack that through Outlook. But anyways, when we set that up, and one individual, he knows he has to drop off, do a swap with his wife. So he has a calendar blocked off there. And the rest of his time he fills with TimeZest. I go into TimeZest, I look at the reports, and I can see that all his calendars, his whole calendar's filled from TimeZest. Yeah, so it's pretty cool. I think last I checked, about 75%, because of the little dashboard on TimeZest, so that 75% of our clients are actually opening and 68% are actually scheduling appointments. So that's a big thing for us because it limits the back and forth and helps people be a little bit more productive.
Yeah, let's speak to that, in terms of how you formally did it, right? The administrative burden of, ticket hits your systems. I'm sure you have various, traps, as I call them, kind of tongue in cheek, or avenues for your clients to, bring to your attention that they need support in some context or capacity, obviously why they contract you. Help me understand maybe, if you had any sort of optics or understanding pre-TimeZest, what percentage of your tickets in any given week were in that dreaded waiting on client status?
Well, I don't have like an actual stats with me, but I will tell you that everyone has that 3-day rule, right? You contact them for 3 business days and they don't answer. And then it's like, once you close the ticket, they're like, hey, I'm ready.
No sooner than that ticket auto closes, correct?
Right, exactly. And then they're, oh crap, it closed. So one of the things that we added to our workflow is through ConnectWise, and on the second day, before you hit that 3rd day, it sends a TimeZest, and then TimeZest we have the reminders built in through the TimeZest. So we found a lot of success that way, because they may not be available right now or like even care to call you back, but because they're so busy, which we understand, but they see that link and they just click it, pick a time out in their calendar a couple of days out, and that ticket progresses. So I don't know if so much for us it's closed it down so much, but it made it to where our techs could be more productive because they don't have to worry about that anymore because it's scheduled out. They have a plan for it already. And then we work things in, again, through ConnectWise, a workflow of like the ticket doesn't change status after the appointment. It sends me a notification and says potentially missed appointment, so that way I could follow up and make sure we're hitting those as well, because that's important.
Absolutely.
Right? If you're going to be telling a client, hey, I'm giving you this flexibility so you could schedule with a tech, when you're available, you got to make those appointments.
For sure. It's funny. I love the feedback that I get, from your peers when they kind of break down how they did it formally. And if you kind of model it out or play it out, pardon me, where, the former process or the way you formerly did it by way of a phone call and email, voicemail exchanges, right? Once you go into 2, 3, 4 days, when you finally get a hold of them, they're going to let you know, like, I raised my hand 4 days ago. Whereas with the introduction of TimeZest, it may play out as such, right? Ticket hits your queue, hits your radar, TimeZest scheduling automation link with the availability, presented to the tech or resource internally you're trying to schedule, goes out. The client may proactively opt into scheduling an appointment with you 4 days out. But their disposition and attitude towards having to wait 4 days, because they had dominion over the process, right? It was like, you got me the link, as soon as I could open up the ticket, whether that's clicking on a tray icon on my PC, called it in, emailed it in, support at, help at, whatever that may potentially look like. Although we're not meeting today for remediation, you gave me your availability pretty much in real time, or in real time, but you got it over to me fairly immediately. I chose next Monday, even though it's Wednesday. Again, going back to the former process, if it was just, scheduling ping pong and going back and forth, you're more often than not, you're going to get not an earful, but they're going to let you know, like, I had to wait X number of days. Whereas we see with the introduction of TimeZest, because the client has dominion over, their availability and marrying it to what you've presented to them, it just seems to be a lot more fluid and just a better scheduling and customer experience. Help me understand how your clients adapted to it. So, pardon me, and Joe, maybe you could speak to this because you've been working with Ergo since Jump Street, since they came on board. Did you come on pre-pandemic or in the throes of it? Like, were we already locked down and were you already all working from home and your clients were working from home? Or had you come into the product prior to?
It was pre-pandemic, but like just right before it all hit. So we did a couple things. We sent some notifications out to our clients to let them know that this was an available option. And I don't know how many people on here are also utilizing Automate, but I'm sure any RMM, you put the little agent icon in there and you could link it to a service ticket. So we added a link. So it was create a service ticket and then it was schedule a support session. So we talked about that so they could start off knowing that they're going to pick a day. And it just started catching on super quick. And we just used it in so many different avenues that they got used to it. I think we may have had pushback in one scenario where we had a status that also included the TimeZest link. And it was like, hey, this is an urgent issue. I don't want to schedule an appointment. I was like, well, that wasn't the intent. So we went in and we reworded the status. But other than that, it's been pretty smooth. Now with our clients, when we onboard new clients, they get introduced to it right away. Because again, going back to how things have changed and a lot of people being remote and not being in offices anymore, when we onboard new clients, how are we going to set up a time to install our agents and do all that good stuff? So what we do is our onboarding team, we have the scheduling URL, we send it to them, they send it out to all of their employees, and they schedule times to get their agent installed, and we do everything and onboard them that way. So it's an early introduction that I think helps get us at these numbers right now.
Well, I think a lot of things that I hear with new clients coming on board is they are worried about that. Like, how are the clients going to respond to this? How are their clients going to take it on? And one of those things that I mentioned to them is it's becoming a standard. We use scheduling for most areas. You have to schedule out a meeting. I mean, to get your dishwasher fixed, you have to schedule a meeting, right? They're not just going to drop everything and come right then. So it's overcoming that fear that clients are used to being able to just pick up the phone and get their question answered right now, even if it's not urgent, right? And being able to get over that hump of fearing what their response may be and understanding it is becoming a standard practice. And it does make your team more successful because they can address things as needed and not constantly putting out fires that might not actually be fires at that exact moment. So that's something that I've definitely see new clients of ours, a hurdle they have to kind of overcome as they work out how this is going to work with their team.
Just out of curiosity, Victoria, were there any instances where, pre-TimeZest in Ergos, where your clients were sending you their scheduling link in any context? Had you seen that, or that crossed your desk?
It happened a lot during onboardings, not so much on the service side. That was just cat and mouse, phone tag, right? Back and forth until you close the ticket. But usually during like onboardings, our professional services even started using TimeZest because that was another time where you had to coordinate a lot of meetings. And that's when we would see clients using like Microsoft's Find Time, things like that. But now I think it just looks better if our project coordinator is reaching out and like, hey, here's a link. What's your availability? Pick a time. It looks a little bit more put together.
For sure. And, I see it quite a bit where, I'll hit my desk Eastern time, and I'll see somebody on the West Coast, 3 hours behind. I'm just hitting my desk here in New York, and they've already downloaded our trial, scheduled a demo for me, later on in the afternoon. 20 minutes later, they're working with Johanna, by way of support and just basic setup on that trial. And then I get to the demo at like 2:00 New York time, and I'm just like, hey, I love it. I love the intensity. I love the enthusiasm. Not sure who referred you to us, but, help me understand how you're coming into TimeZest so hot and heavy. And more often than not, it's because they've been pressed by one of their clients that's like, we've been using Calendly with our clients to schedule our meetings for X number of years. I'm the new POC here. I know we did the QBR. I have a good understanding of, what we can track you for and the service and support that you deliver us. But the scheduling's got to get easier. So typically, it answers my question, like this is coming together at 1,000,000 miles an hour. More often than not, like Joe said, it's become the standard. It's definitely not specific or unique to the MSP channel or, ITSP service delivery. The concept of Click on this link to take a look at my availability, marry it to yours. We'll confirm it, get it in both calendars, and get the associated alert notification for when we need to meet. Certainly not something that, is just specific to our corner of the world. So more and more clients are using Calendly or bookings into their install base. And many of them are pressing their MSP or ITSP for the very same, scheduling automation service. I want to jump into TimeZest real quick. Just do a very basic round trip. I'm not trying to knock anybody down with a full blown, demonstration, but for those on the call and the webinar here today, just want to give you a quick 30, 60-second overview. But as you've seen, like you said earlier, Victoria, you're just getting compression from all angles. You've alluded to or directly stated to closing those gaps with tool set. How do you balance the cost that you have to take in relative to the gap you're seeking to close, right? Because like you said, you were able to a certain degree, rework the agreement or up the agreement and the price point per seat. Glad and definitely overjoyed to hear your clients didn't push back too hard. It looks like you weren't kind of bumping them year over year. And when you had to kind of cross that bridge, it was a win-win for both parties. But as you brought in maybe a TimeZest or a Cloud Radio or some of the other tool sets that you mentioned, how do you go through that kind of risk reward where it's like, hey, we have to buy something to close this gap? Help me understand maybe the blocking and tackling of those decisions.
So it's always, you have to show the efficiency that can come with it. And it's either we spend all this time just to do this one thing, or we use it this way or use it that way. And then not only that, but overall growth and training your team. You need to be able to have things that'll make their workday easier. You want them to be more efficient, you got to make their workday easier. One example that I use with TimeZest recently is our dispatchers and call routers. Those are positions that we had to, a lot of times they work faster because of tribal knowledge too, like they know who's good at what because they've been here a while. But when that changes, they have to relearn that. So you try, making sure you're tracking certifications and skills and ConnectWise, all that good stuff. Create reports for them. But also we started saying, okay, if the client does call in and for some reason a tech is not available, here's this TimeZest scheduling URL. So you could tell the client while you're on the phone, like, hey, I don't have anyone available right now. Once you confirm it's a non-urgent issue, obviously. But I have someone available at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, whatever, and let the client schedule it right there. So they could kind of be like the intermediary between that. And that helps streamline things, right? That makes them available to get off, go on to the next thing. Same thing with scheduling, like reassigns, escalations, things like that. So really just pushing that. Cloud Radio is kind of easy to push because it had integrations with a lot of tool sets, for instance, TimeZest. And it kind of helps to push some of that self-triage for the clients. So you do that, have them go through the ticket, and then it gives them an option right there, then and there, to schedule the ticket. So
yeah, and like Victoria mentioned, we certainly, many Cloud Radio partners are tucking TimeZest scheduling automation links, like Victoria, mentioned, that front end client, self-service portal, if you will. They're provisioning and doing a certain degree of triage themselves just by working within the tool. Much like Victoria spoke to, in that self-service or front-end portal where clients can log into, basically submit information specific to what they're up against. We do have the availability to put the scheduling piece in there as well. So not only are they basically, reporting to you what's going on and raising their hand, what they need support and assistance for, they could take that extra step and actually get in your calendar for the next steps and for the fix. Cool. So yeah, just gonna cross over real quick. Want to show a little bit of TimeZest. Do not want to do a full-blown demonstration here, but just want to show you, the quick and easy use. Victoria kind of mentioned this, but I do want to say one thing that I should have maybe pointed out earlier on in the webinar is, if you're a live desk, and Ergos is, if you are taking live phone calls and attempting to remediate those issues or those instances in a live call context, we're all for it. Continue to do that. That is, best practice in service delivery, and we couldn't support, or endorse that methodology or that live desk response. But as you know, it never, not to say it never, but the percentages of remediation in a live call, it's not where you want it to be. Invariably in those instances, you will need to schedule out time for, a subsequent connection to apply that fix. And certainly that's where, we come in and totally enhance that process, where it's not a day and a half of time entries of, I left a voicemail, I sent an email, that dreaded scheduling ping pong back and forth. So like I said, if you're a live desk culture, by all means, we fully endorse that, continue to do so, but it doesn't always play out to fruition as you'd like in that context. And where we would cut into, the potential back and forth ping pong game is, the quick and easy availability to say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Client, here's our availability, marry it to yours, and then let's meet in the middle, based on how that availability aligns. So everybody knows what we're looking at here. I want to take a quick moment to thank the folks over at the ConnectWise event program and just ConnectWise in general for bringing us into the ecosystem and featuring our webinar here today as a ConnectWise event partner. Everybody on the call knows what we're looking at here, so I don't need to belabor the point. We probably all see, a ticket of this nature. Unfortunately, when we close our eyes, because we all, live and breathe within the PSA, but have a very simple ticket. I can't print. While I'd like to think most, clients or end users opening up tickets will write you, a War and Peace novel or a Dickens novel. Certainly not the case. If this were a live ticket that I, as a, dispatcher or a tech, then needed to triage and work, I would know I need a little bit more context as to what's going on here above and beyond a 3-word summary of I can't print. So, your process with TimeZest, once you potentially, bring our solution into the mix, is ticket hits the board, whether a dispatcher is reviewing it or if techs are at liberty to pick up tickets off that board and review it themselves and then work. It's what resource are we seeking to schedule? So I'm going to go ahead and pick, let's pick on Pat Jones here today. And what appointment type are we seeking to schedule as well? So if it were an I can't print, ticket or scenario that I need to respond to, in all likelihood, I'd probably do a remote access to PC session. The one thing that I always try to impress upon my demonstration or webinar audiences is when I click on Ask Client to Schedule, that is, where the TimeZest automation is coming in. So we're totally removing the, need to kind of mind juggle or go to and through the ConnectWise dispatch portal, the ConnectWise calendar, personal calendars. Once we get the, handshake to the PSA properly established, when I click on that Ask Client to Schedule button, that's exactly what we're automating on behalf of that dispatcher and or tech, who's then, going to go ahead and work, that instance or work that ticket with the client. So I click on Ask Client to Schedule. The TimeZest magic's kicked in. It's went to and through Pat Jones's calendar, and based on that lookup, it's now sent a subsequent email to the client. Pretty basic verbiage here. All of our, individual users or partners have the availability to customize these emails. But most importantly, when I click on Choose a Time, like I said, I have real-time insights into Pat Jones's availability for me to connect with him to then, get to the bottom of my I can't print issues. More often than not, and I don't have a hard percentage here, but clients are going to jump on the very next available appointment, like we saw there. And Pat's schedule tomorrow at 8 a.m. is next up. Clients, are typically going to pounce on the most available session that you put in front of them, although there is some exceptions to that. So real quick, we do give you the availability to confirm best contact number. You could, mandate that, suggest it to the client, or skip over it entirely. But more importantly, based on the client marrying Pat's availability to theirs, we now have a quick confirmation email. Pretty much just rehashes, the appointment type, who they're meeting with, date and time that they selected. We do have the availability to reschedule or cancel here, but most importantly, I'm going to make it quick, simple, and relatively thoughtless to then embed that now confirmed appointment in my calendar with the associated alert and notification prior to meeting with Pat. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. If I go back into the ticket and quickly refresh it, I'll just show you what we automate or what we update, pardon me, within CW Manage. So again, if you're already sold on the concept of scheduling links, maybe you're using them by way of an email signature scheduling link, or links on your website. Like we said, it's become the norm, certainly where TimeZest stands out, and delineates from some of the other, potential options out there. is that we hand off workflow automation back into the PSA. So just a quick recap, we've updated the ticket to a scheduled status now. There's an itemized note trail every step of the way of that round trip process. So how we emailed the client, asking them to select a time for a remote PC session, what date and time they chose, who they scheduled it with, and what the best contact number is for us to connect with for that meeting. And then last but not least, based on that round trip scheduling activity, we'll also drop a meeting, confirmed meeting, in the resources and meetings tab, which, as you know, is going to present certainly within the ConnectWise calendars and dispatch portal. So that's it. There's a whole host of things I could show you above and beyond that. Not to imply it goes without saying, but email signature or scheduling link in an email signature, we certainly do that. If I were to click on, Johanna's scheduling link in her email signature, if you want tickets to be created in the back end of ConnectWise, activities, again, there's just a whole host of ways that we can hand off information and workflows back into the PSA. That's pretty much it. I wanted to see, Joe, if there's any specific questions, based on what we've reviewed in the chat. If anybody has a question for either myself, Johanna, or Victoria, by all means, fire away. And based on Johanna's, I'm going to say there's no
nothing
question.
yet.
Nothing just yet, but
yeah. Is there anything we can help with that you've had, burning in your mind since our last webinar, or topic specific or TimeZest specific?
this is where I normally say silence is a nod, but I don't think that's the case just here.
Yeah.
We just want to thank, like I said, the ConnectWise Invent program managers again for inviting us in and allowing us to do a webinar, under their banner. Victoria, it's always a pleasure. I don't know if you want me to share, our interaction at IT Nation. Maybe we'll save that for our next webinar where we bring you on. But, I've known Victoria. I've worked for, a few different companies in the channel. I've had the availability to work with Virgos and Victoria at previous stops. And it was suggested to me that we bring her on for our first webinar here. I, pounced at the opportunity, but anything in closing, Victoria?
No, I mean, the thing is, when I was talking about like challenges we had on the help desk, Matt Klein's president of Virgos, he was like, hey, why don't you hit up Jameson? Because he was talking about some tool. I was like, okay, let me email Jameson, see what comes of, because there was nothing else out there,
Sure.
And I get an email back and it's like, yeah, sure, we can do a demo and get you set up. And I was super excited to get it started and start pushing it out and everything, because on my end, it helps a lot. And there's a couple of techs that use it more than others. And some people I have to remind, like, hey, did you try TimeZest on this? When I'm like, why is this ticket open so long? And they're like, oh, because I can't reach the client. Cool, you did steps 1 through 3. Did you try TimeZest? I'm like, oh no, I'll try TimeZest. So some people, you still got to get them used to it. But overall, I think it's been a huge time saver for our help desk.
We did get a question. So we were asked, can I schedule multiple texts on a ticket? And yes, you can. So as you saw earlier when Christian did his selection of the resources, if you select multiple resources, it will schedule up to 3 all on the same meeting. So if you have a sales and a support or a project manager, you can put them both on the same call, or even with training. So, if you have a trainee that needs to shadow calls, it's simple to add them to that appointment, and then they're able to attend as well. Okay.
Oh, one thing that I will say was pretty cool is adding the Office 365 scheduling recently.
Yes.
Like adding that calendar, because there was some challenges between having things on your Office 365 calendar and non-ConnectWise. So awesome.
Yeah,
I'm glad you guys did that.
So yeah, for sure. In Q4, we went live with our integration to Office 365. So just to give you some basic oversight there, much like I did with the example on the ticket that I scheduled, pretty quickly, when I click on Ask Client to Schedule, above and beyond, how I kind of talk through it with the example in the ticket, will simultaneously look up availability for that resource or resources, both within the ConnectWise Manage calendar and Office 365. So, just kind of shores things up, right? If you make a switch or a quick edit to your personal calendar, we wanted to give our partners 100% peace of mind that, that switch or, that edit in their personal calendar would be factored in when they went to go schedule by way of TimeZest. So simultaneously, we'll look up both resources. So we will, get that accurate picture of that resource's availability. On the flip side, though, based on role within your organization, on a per user basis, you'd have the availability to elect whether you're primarily writing that appointment to ConnectWise Manage first and foremost, or if you wanted to write it to Office 365. Now, by way of the sync between Manage and Outlook, those two streams will eventually meet on the back end. But, I think the core use case or consideration to writing to Office 365 in that first position would be for those team members that don't live and breathe within tickets. So, your C-levels, maybe sales and marketing. I'm sure there's some organizations out there where they're completely firewalled from Manage. They're not particularly living, within tickets. We would have the availability to get the entirety of your organization on one scheduling platform, TimeZest. Again, by having the availability to schedule to your technical resources to manage, and then your non-ticket oriented folks, writing the appointment to their Outlook and Office 365 calendar.
So we did get another question, and we have recorded this. So I believe we'll be sending it out here in a couple days. And then also, if you didn't know, we do have a YouTube channel. And so you can see some of our more recent webinars on there as well, and different training videos and things like that. And then if you guys have any questions at all, feel free to reach out to us at help@timezest.com, and we can make sure to help with any personalized needs there too.
Yeah, absolutely. So unless we have any other questions, Joe, thank you for kind of minding the Q&A log per se. Anybody can reach out to me if you have any questions coming out of today's webinar, Christian@timezest.com. For our partners on today's call, I'm sure you have Johanna's email in your Rolodex, but nonetheless, you can email her, Johanna@timezest.com. Victoria, thank you once more for taking just about 43 minutes from what I'd assume is a very busy hump day Wednesday afternoon to sharing some insights on what TimeZest has done with regards to, like we said, cutting into the Great Resignation and some of the correlated margin compression you're seeing, with these current market climates. So once more, I'm Christian Johns, a community manager with TimeZest. I want to thank everybody again for their time and have a great afternoon.